Jamaica, last week we witnessed the emotional roller coaster of Portia Simpson Miller, who governed with raw heart and grassroots passion. But in 2007, Jamaica shifted gears, handing the reins of power to perhaps the most cerebral, articulate, and complex political strategist in Jamaica. His name, Oret Bruce Golding, Jamaica's 8th Prime Minister, a political prodigy who became the youngest Member of Parliament in Jamaica's history at age 24. Golding possessed a forensic mind for policy, budget analysis, and parliamentary procedures, making him widely regarded as the sharpest political intellect in the room. Yet, his political journey was defined by radical political gambles, devastating electoral humiliations, historic social reforms, and ultimately an explosive international crisis that pushed his administration over the precipice. Welcome back to part 7 of our 9-part definitive historical countdown, In the Shadow of the Chief. This week, we go far deeper than the history books usually venture into the sojourn of Bruce Golding's political journey, from his catastrophic split from the JLP to form the NDM, his bitter defeat at the hands of Olivia Babsy Grange, his return to lead the JLP to victory, his major economic wins, the devastating Manet Phelps and Phillips scandal, the commission of inquiry that broke him, the Tivoli Gardens showdown, and his historic decision to hand the reins of power over to Andrew Holness. Bruce Golding didn't enter politics by accident. He was born into it as the son of Tacius Golding, the first Speaker of the House of Representatives in independent Jamaica. And after graduating from the University of West Indies with a degree in economics, Bruce was elected to Parliament in 1972 at just 24 years old. For decades, Golding was the master technician of the Jamaica Labour Party, serving under Edward Seaga in the 1980s as Minister of Construction and JLP Chairman, as the natural heir apparent to Seaga's throne until 1995, when, frustrated by Seaga's autocratic leadership, toxic garrison politics, and a system he believed was fundamentally broken, Golding committed what many considered political suicide by resigning as JLP chairman, walking out of Belmont Road, and abandoning the Green Machine. He founded the National Democratic Movement in October 1995, promising a new era of constitutional reform, anti-corruption, and an end to political tribalism, attracting thousands of middle-class Jamaicans, intellects, and young voters. But what looked like a political revolution on paper proved to be a tactical disaster in reality. You see, by leaving the JLP at the exact moment the party was positioning itself to seriously challenge P.J. Patterson's PNP, Golding fractured the anti-PNP vote, guaranteeing the PNP's historical third-term victory in 1997, and placed himself directly in the crosshairs of the formidable JLP machinery he had spent 25 years building. The true test of Golding's political gamble came on December 18, 1997, when he chose to contest his home turf of Central St. Catherine, a seat he had held for years and believed was his personal fortress, prompting Edward Seaga to dispatch one of the most battle-hardened political operators in the JLP, Olivia Babsy Grange, to punish him for his treason. The contest became a test of political strategy, where Golding ran on a high-minded policy governance reform and constitutional mechanics. Babsy Grange ran on raw, relentless, on-the-ground JLP organizational power, rallying the party faithful by reminding them that Bruce had abandoned the Labour family when they needed him most. On election night, the results sent shockwaves through Jamaica's political history, as Babsy Grange systematically dismantled the NDM experiment in central St. Catherine, leaving Golding without his own seat and the NDM without a single parliamentary seat anywhere in the country, casting the man who was supposed to be the next Prime Minister completely outside the walls of Parliament. For the next 4 years, Golding found himself in the political wilderness, and following another crushing defeat in 2001 by-election in Northeast St. Ann, he resigned as NDM leader, stepped away from representational politics, and became a radio talk show host and analyst, which keeps his voice relevant in national discourse, marking one of the greatest cautionary tales in Caribbean political history. The tale of a brilliant strategist who miscalculated his own pull and thrust of political power. However, by 2002, the JLP realized it could not win without Golding's intellect, and Golding realized he could never become Prime Minister without the JLP machine, leading to a moment of supreme irony when Babsy Grange herself, the very woman who had handed him his most humiliating defeat, officially signed Bruce Golding's application form to rejoin the Jamaica Labour Party in October 2002. When Edward Seaga finally retired in 2005, Golding assumed the party presidency, systematically transformed the JLP into a disciplined, modern election-winning force, and in September 2007 faced off against Prime Minister Portia Simpson Miller, framing himself as the chief servant, promising transparency, governance reform, and economic modernization. The general election that follows brought redemption to Golding and the JLP, as they brought the PNP's 18-year reign to a dramatic halt in a razor-thin 32-28 seats victory. 10 years after Babsy Grange drove Bruce Golding into the political wilderness, Orit Bruce Golding walked into Jamaica House as the 8th Prime Minister of Jamaica, taking office just as the 2008 Great Recession hit the global economy, causing bauxite revenues to collapse, remittances to dry up, and national debt to soar. Despite the turmoil, his administration executed some of the most far-reaching social and economic policies in our history, including the immediate elimination of secondary school tuition fees to fulfill a core campaign promise, the abolition of public hospital user fees across the island to guarantee health care access regardless of income, the creation of the Constituency Development Fund, CDF, to allocate annual state funds directly to all 63 members of Parliament for grassroots development, and a significant expansion of the PATH program to protect Jamaica's poorest. With Jamaica facing insolvency in 2010, his finance team executed the revolutionary Jamaica Debt Exchange, voluntarily restructuring domestic debt, slashing interest rates, and saving the country from catastrophic economic default. However, just as his economic reforms were taking root, Golding's premiership was derailed by an international crisis surrounding the August 2009 U.S. extradition request for Christopher Dudis-Coke, the reputed head of the presidential clique gang in Tivoli Gardens, part of West Kingston, which happened to be the heart of Golding's own parliamentary constituency. Golding resisted the request for 9 months, citing constitutional violations regarding U.S. wiretap evidence.
It is not a matter as to whether the minister is inclined to authorize the extradition. It is a question that the minister would be authorizing something that she knows to be in violation of the law.
But the situation exploded when opposition MP Dr. Peter Phillips revealed in Parliament that the government had engaged powerhouse Washington lobbying firm Manet, Phelps and Phillips to lobby the U.S. government regarding the extradition treaty. As political pressure reached a boiling point and the PNP opposition demanded a full public inquiry, Golding acquiesced and made a dreadful miscalculation in establishing the Manet Commission of Inquiry. He made another baffling choice by retaining Hugh Small QC, a brilliant legal mind, but a former PNP Minister of Finance. And when the live broadcast of the inquiry hit Jamaica's television screens in early 2011, it turned into the ultimate political trial. PNP attorney K.D. Knight QC, famously dubbed Starboy by the public media commentators and PNP supporters, transformed the hearing room into a theoretical masterclass, subjecting Golding and his administration to a brutal, merciless cross-examination that systematically dismantled Golding's defense by exposing contradictions, private emails, and party maneuvers. In a chilling, iconic moment that resonated across the entire Caribbean, K.D. Knight looked at the sitting Prime Minister of Jamaica and delivered a blistering command: "Pack your bags and go," leaving the polished, untouchable intellect battered and stripped of his moral standing on live television. Parallel to his legal warfare was the tragic reality on the ground. By then, Golding had eventually sanctioned the signing of the extradition warrant for Dudis-Coke to salvage international relations. This prompted armed gunmen to barricade Tivoli Gardens and declare war on the state. On May 24, 2010, Jamaican security forces launched a massive joint military and police operation to retake Tivoli Gardens. This resulted in over 70 civilian and security personnel deaths before Coke was eventually captured weeks later in a wig and eventually extradited to the US. The tragic loss of life and the television devastation of the Manet inquiry permanently wounded Golding's authority, and by mid-2011, facing a defining crossroads as a lightning rod for opposition attacks. Despite having delivered real fiscal stability through the JDX and major social reforms, Golding chose not to wait around to see if he could defy the odds in the next general election. Instead, he shocked the nation once again in September 2011 by announcing his resignation as Prime Minister and JLP leader. Executing one final constitutional maneuver, he stepped aside to hand power to his popular, unblemished 39-year-old Education Minister Andrew Holness. He was sworn in on October 23, 2011 as Jamaica's youngest ever Prime Minister, while Golding walked away from the front line of politics at age 63. Golding's legacy remains a complex tapestry of a brilliant strategist who tried to break the two-party system. The man crushed by Babs the Grange, the Prime Minister who saved the economy during a global recession, and the leader whose naive gamble on a public inquiry allowed KD Knight to bring his premiership to a dramatic end. Today, Oret Bruce Golding has cemented his place as a highly respected elder statesman, frequently called upon by major international bodies like the OAS and CARICOM to lead diplomatic observation missions across the Americas, while still offering candid commentary on national governance issues that occasionally irritates his former JLP colleagues. To his supporters, Mr. Golding was an intellectual heavyweight, a policy strategist, and a reformer who dared to challenge the traditional bipartisan status quo. To his critics, his legacy is remembered for his political calculated risks, compromised governance, and the catastrophic Manet, Phelps, and Phillips Christopher Dodos Coke crisis. Love him or not, he was one of the sharpest minds to ever sit in Gordon House. Even his fiercest political opponents will admit that when Bruce Golding stood up to debate in Parliament, everyone listened. His grasp of constitutional law, parliamentary procedure, national economics, and government policy was virtually unrivaled in his era. He was a master of the detail, the kind of politician who didn't just read state papers, but dissected them, and that's precisely what makes his legacy so fascinating, but so perplexing.
What has to be done is that we have to transform a culture that has been entrenched in our politics for many, many years. Garrison is not a physical structure that you can tear down. It is a system and a culture that has to be transformed. That process actually started in West Kingston before I went there. We are continuing that. It is one of the most peaceful constituencies in the whole island. There's a relationship that exists between PNP and JLP supporters there that is second to none anywhere else in the island. And we have to continue that process.
Friends, next week's chapter promises to be an absolutely fanger as we dive into the story of a leader who transformed from a green 39-year-old political prodigy thrust into a trial by fire into the undisputed sovereign of modern Jamaican electoral politics, Dr. Andrew Holness, taking the reins of a battered Jamaica Labour Party. Holness endured a devastating defeat at the hands of Portia Simpson Miller, crushed internal rebellion within his own ranks, and returned to engineer a surgical, technocratic political machine that broke decades of historic electoral precedent. Next week, we go deep into the rise, triumphs, fierce controversies, and unyielding dominance of Andrew Holness, the man rewriting the political landscape of modern Jamaica. Throughout this ongoing series, In the Shadow of the Chief, we will uncover the untold historical narratives of all of Jamaica's prime ministers, examining both their crowning achievements and their profound flaws, culminating with the chief himself, Sir Alexander Bustamante, Jamaica's first Prime Minister and the foundational architect of the nation. Don't miss next week's episode. Subscribe, like, share, and I'll see you next time. Until then, remember, out of many, one people, one country, one Jamaica, land we love under God. See you next time.
Jamaica,
Here we come,
one people, one nation,
standing tall,
under God.
strong and free.
Jamaica,
The land we love.